Now that you know how to solve a quadratic equation by completing the square, is the time in which you can ask, can we generalize this method to any quadratic equation? So in this video you will learn how to obtain the quadratic formula. Okay, so the general form of any quadratic equation is given when you use the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So this will be the general form of any quadratic equation. Now we're going to apply the same method that we use, or the same algorithm that we apply by completing the square for this formula. So the first thing I'm going to do is just to take dc and I'm going to subtract it on both sides. So in this case I'm gonna get it on the other side. So I'm gonna get ax squared plus bx equals minus c. Okay, so I just subtract both sides by c. And I need to complete the perfect square trinomial. But if you remember the perfect square trinomial, I'm going to write the formula here of the perfect square trinomial. I'm going to use h to put the formula. I'm going to write it here. So if you have x squared plus or minus 2hx plus h squared, so we can write that this is x plus or minus h to the second power. This is the perfect square trinomial. But if I want to complete the perfect square trinomial here, it means that I need to get the first term. This term should be a square. Now the problem here is that this is not a square, so we have to convert it into a square first. To do it, I'm going to multiply by a. So imagine that I'm going to multiply here by a, and here by a. So after I multiply by a, I'm gonna get that this is a times a squared, so it's going to be a square, plus this is going to be b, and here is going to be ax equals minus ac. Now the next step is to complete the square. Now I have a first ax that is to the second power plus b times ax, and I need to add here a term to get a perfect square. So to get this term, I'm just going to follow the formula. The formula says that I need to multiply x by 2h. So in this case, b is going to be 2h. So in plain terms, h is going to be b over 2. So I just need to raise h to the second power and add it on both sides. So in this case, I'm going to add x to the second power. So b squared over 4. So add it on the other side as well, b squared over 4. Now, as I add both sides by b squared, means that the first term, this term that is here, is going to be the perfect square trinomial. So it's going to be written as ax plus b halves to the second power. And the other term is going to be b squared over 4 minus ac. Now what I'm going to do before applying the square root property, remember that I'm going to apply the square root property, is to add the rational expressions. So I'm going to add these two rational expressions. That this is something that you should know already, but we're going to remember that we need a common denominator. In this case the denominator is 4, so I'm going to multiply and divide by 4 the term 4ac, the term ac. So I can have a common denominator and add it. So in this case, I'm gonna get ax plus b halves squared equals, so I'm gonna get a common denominator, b squared minus 4ac over 4. Okay? Now, what I just did is just to add rational expressions. So we're going to move now to the part in which we apply the square root property. So let's apply the square root property here. A square root property. So I'm going to apply the square root property, and to apply it, I just need to verify that this is a square, so on the other side it will be a square root. So remember, the square root property just x squared equals a, means that x becomes positive or negative square root of a. This is the square root property. So I'm just going to apply it. In this case, the x term is going to be ax plus b halves. So ax plus b halves is going to be, observe that if I apply the square root here, I'm going to imagine, remember that the other way is that you imagine that you apply square root here. So if I apply the square root here, I can apply the square root of the denominator 4 to be 2, and the square root of the numerator, that is the square root of an expression. So I'm just going to put positive and negative, a square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2. And to solve for x, remember that I'm going to solve for x, so I need to subtract both sides by b squared, by b halves. So I'm going to subtract both sides by b halves. So ax equals minus b halves plus or negative the square root of, the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2. Now I can just look at that, I have a common denominator, so I can put ax equals minus b, positive or negative, a square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2. If you remember, we just apply the square root property in this case, and we're completing the square. So what we did, we just apply completing the square. After we complete the square, we just apply the square root property. We're applying the same method that you saw in the last video. This is the cool thing. We're just generalizing information. And to finish our formula, we just need to divide by a both sides of the expression. So I'm gonna get minus b, positive or negative, b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And this is the end. This is the solution that we have. It means that this equation, that is a quadratic equation, is solved by this formula that is calling the quadratic formula. This is solving by using the quadratic formula. So as you can see here, we just apply the square root property, perfect square trinomial. We're taking a bunch of algebra here to analyze and to get one term. And this is the cool part of the fact that you work with general terms. When we work with general terms, what we're doing is to finding the general information that you require to solve any situation. So now, if you have any quadratic formula, you can just solve it by using this method. Any quadratic formula could be solved by using our quadratic formula. Any quadratic equation, can be solved by doing any quadratic formula. That is the formula that is here. Now you can test it. I suggest you to test it with one equation. So I'm gonna write one equation for you to work on. I'm gonna write it here with red so you can see it. Test it. Test the quadratic formula. Test the quadratic formula with x squared minus 3x minus 6 equal 0. Test it. Test this formula with this. You can solve it by quadratic formula, a, b, and c, or you can solve it by completing the square method, and you can see, and tell me in the comments. Tell me in the comments which one is easier which one is going to be, which one do you prefer to use, and in the next video we're going to talk about if you can know the number of real solutions by using the quadratic formula. Is it possible to know it before you solve the formula? Before knowing, just by knowing the quadratic equation, is there's a chance to know the number of real solutions? This is something we're going to see in the next video. Remember to comment your answers. Which method do you prefer? Complete the square or quadratic formula? Test it and tell me in the comments. Like the video if it helps you to understand mathematics. See you in the next video and have a nice day. Bye.